Right, everybody. Coming to you tonight in our bi-weekly little tradition that we started together, where I'm giving reports of the Aldermen meetings and really highlighting some of the major things that happened. So I'll go over a few items tonight. We had a lot of discussion on the final item, and we'll get to that here in a second. So, during the public comment section, there were some things brought up that I had discussed in my last Alderman meeting report, and I think they're kind of interesting to bring up. We talked a lot about how as we move forward with our conservative values, sometimes there are decisions that need to be made, or sort of philosophical points that need to be ascertained through how conservative and liberty-minded people might vote. And it's possible that liberty-minded individuals might differ on certain issues that get into some of these complexities. I talked about that last week, when it came to the drinking ordinance, where the Board of Aldermen lifted the limitation that you no longer have to sell food in order to sell alcohol. And so that gets into kind of one of those conundrums where you say, okay, we don't want big government, but we also want our values maintained. So the question is, do you sort of have big government maintain your values? Even if you want to call this action big government, which, some may not even. So that's kind of the balance there. It's not always just cut and dry, and so that's where our philosophical standpoints need to be tested. The citizens who elect us need to test those, and we really need to have a firm grasp on the ideological understandings of these things so that we can move forward with the best decisions for our citizens as far as being liberty-minded. So, the other issue besides that one that was brought up along those same lines last week was this idea of the requirement to identify oneself to a police officer. And so the idea is, conflict between police powers and support for our law enforcement. It's somewhat of a catch-22. I fall more on the civil libertarian side of things. You absolutely support our police officers. They absolutely actually need to be funded more. However, what we don't want to do is give sort of an unlimited scope for them to operate, because that leads into some scary things if you look throughout history. The citizen that spoke, Peter Kershaw, who I know well, he talked about how officers are inclined to believe the bar for detainment is far lower than it actually is when ordinances like these are on the books. It makes a lot of sense, He talked about things that are, criminal suspicion versus committing a crime, and what can be suspicion of committing a crime. So again, these sort of sleight of hand comments, these terms that get used sort of universally in policing, like furtive movement. The speaker said it tonight. I think it was a fantastic thing to say. A furtive movement is not. The example that was brought up when this was posed by our police department is, well, if someone is outside, looking like they're breaking into a building, and then you shine their flashlight on, and they turn around, they've got a screwdriver in their hand. But that's an extreme version of what we're talking about. Again, with the furtive movement. Again, you took too long to slow down on the stop. Again, you whatever the case may be, if the officer doesn't feel comfortable with the interaction, as citizens, it's not our duty. As much as we want to respect officers, not only do we want to respect officers, we want to teach our children, just like we were taught to respect our officers. But at the end of the day, there cannot be a blank check to these individuals who, at the end of the day, protect and serve. So I wanted to bring that back one more time, just because I think there were some really interesting points on it, and I agree with a lot of things that were said about it tonight. The next topic I want to talk about is the Rock the Spectrum presentation. And I'm going to just check on the video stream really quickly, because last week it got cut off. I'll be right back. All right, we're good to go. I want to make sure that last time I finished and I was ready to get down, wind down for the evening, and had to start back up. So I wanted to make sure we're still on with you guys. Okay, the second one was the spectrum presentation. If anyone is familiar with autism, there are a lot of variations on autism, Asperger's, a lot of different mental, I'm not sure exactly how to refer to them, conditions that young kids and growing up into adults can have. So if you guys know anything about this, autism is also often referred to as, quote, on the spectrum, basically referring to the fact that there's a spectrum of experiences that someone with autism can have. They can be high functioning, they can be essentially on their own society, or it can go as far as nonverbal, where they can't communicate. They have sensory perception issues, where if their lights are too much or sound is too much, it can really trigger some difficult responses from these human beings. You know, I just love the fact that in the presentation tonight, we kept referring to them as human beings, because sometimes there's such a dehumanizing factor when we talk about individuals that are suffering with things like this. So I just appreciate so much how the presenter just kept saying human beings, you know, and reiterating that to us and reaching in and touching our hearts in the compassionate side that we want to address. So they have some fantastic, I would, if I relayed what they said, I would do it injustice. You guys need to go back and find that section of the meeting and listen and look up Rock the Spectrum. It's a local group. I've known the people that run it for a while, not just more through my politics, not in a personal way. But they do some great things. So I wanted to kind of bring that up because I had an idea, and I went up before the board and talked about it. The idea is that we want to become a autism, I believe they called it an autism acceptance community. There are these designations that international organizations give to certain communities, where folks on the spectrum, or families of those on the spectrum, can come and enjoy this town and know that in the different establishments they go into, there's going to be training on how to deal with things like this. And so the thing that I brought up, and this is important to kind of look at what we do have already, is a few years ago, the Parks Department built what is called an inclusive playground right outside of the Recplex there. And it's a playground with some fantastic elements that kids on the spectrum can use. So what I was talking about as an idea is that when you drive into town on Highway 65, there are signs for a lot of stuff. There are signs for Table Rock Lake, there are signs for Bull Shoals Lake, and there are signs for certain attractions as well. So one of the signs says, "This way to the Shepherd of the Hills Outdoor Play." And of course, that makes a lot of sense. That play is world renowned. We want to be promoting that. There could be, absolutely be, I feel, a sign that says, "This way to our inclusive playground." And then in this way, that inclusive playground, as opposed to just having an app on your phone, which we think is great to have as well, or having information somewhere on a website, I think a physical location to keep some of this information would be really, really powerful as well. And that inclusive playground is a perfect place. So when you go to a hiking trail, they often have those sort of memo boards where they post things on, but they also have those slots you open up almost like a newspaper slot. So we could have a board there with different pamphlets and maybe even a sign saying there's more information inside the Recplex here. And so, of course, when you mention something, the mayor deputizes you for things, and I do serve on Parks Board, so the mayor said, "Well, I appreciate you, Marshall, volunteering to lead up this effort." So I really look forward to working with the Rock the Spectrum organization and really just helping them in any way I can. And I know my fellow Park Board members, among them Alderman C. serves on the board of Aldermen and on the Parks Board with myself. So we're going to really tackle some of these things and make sure that Branson is an inclusive community for all. The other thing that was brought up is second quarter financials. Folks, there wasn't anything too pressing in this. We had a really, really good second quarter. It's tough to, compare it to last year because everyone knows last year was kind of a dead year because of the pandemic, especially compare things to 2019. But I do want to bring that up to your attention that you can go back and review that. And I think it's important for citizens to be able to review our quarterly financial statements in a way that our finance director breaks them down in a PowerPoint presentation that is easily digested. Okay, the second to last thing I want to talk about is the Pet Ordinance. It was kind of something that was really highly publicized. We had some public meetings about it. You know, I'm interested in making sure that we do have some semblance of control with this. You know, much different than how it was proposed, but I do. You know, there was a comment that was brought up of animal lovers versus non-animal lovers, because believe it or not, there are folks who they just choose not to have pets. It's not something that they really want in their life. I'm a person. I don't have pets. I really can't see in the future any time where I would enjoy having a pet. That's just me personally. So I think when we talk about things like noise, the noise angle, whatever, if you have a party in your house and there's a ruckus, the police can come. And there are noise ordinances for pets, but I sometimes think that's overlooked. So, and another thing is that we have a lot of commercial properties in this town, shows that have pets, zoos, things like that. And of course, there needs to be regulation on those, so we don't have a tiger running around our town like they had in Houston. But one of the things that was brought up is that this whole commercial animal care concept was sort of quoted as the reason why we needed to revamp this part of code. There are only 11 of the 48 pages that deal with that in the code. Sometimes I think too much is made of the 48 pages aspect of it, and they say this is inherently bad because it is so long. I think the 48 pages comes into play when it's so long that people, when they really have to take hours out of their day to read something, that's when it becomes a difficult pill to swallow for us. So, some of the silly things that are in it that were brought up, what kind of windows can you have in your chicken coop? There's incentives for neglect. If you're an irresponsible pet owner, you might not want to take it to the vet. You don't have your proper papers, So certain things like this, keeping the exotic animal language in there, maybe addressing some of the noise aspects. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I appreciate what the Aldermen did tonight. They postponed this. I know it's been postponed. It's better to postpone something than to put something on the books. It's going to be on there for decades. That is onerous and of a big government nature. The last thing I want to bring up is these zoning changes that we're working on right now. I really encourage you guys, another thing, to go back and review what's been going on. Again, it seems like I talk to you guys about this every single time I come in these reports. Friendly Hills, Fountains on Fall Creek, which is the development next to Country Bluff. There's a lot of issues in the way these are zoned using an annexation plan of intent, which is highly unusual, and different things like this. So there is a wealth of knowledge. This is a lot of chapters in the book I'll write one day, but I did want to bring that to the attention of you guys because it was something that was discussed for a number of hours. But we did. We're gonna take that away and bring it back as well. And so I think it's really important that we take our time and do these things, because I'll tell you, it's easy to just want to say we've already been here for 4 hours and move on. But it is so important to do our due diligence and to help the citizens in any way we can and really dig down on the minute details of everything. I usually like to give you guys an update on the Branson Statesman. This is our third article here, entitled Crime. This is my rough draft of it. We're going to talk about some of the crime issues in our community, and that issue is going to be coming out soon, as well as we're going to really streamline how we get these editions out there and how we can really get them in the hands of a lot of us. So, reminder, August 31st, a week from tonight, is Shoji Tabuchi Day in Branson, honoring Shoji, Dorothy, and Christina Tabuchi. It's going to be 11 a.m. out in front of the Clay Cooper Theater. We're going to have a press conference. Invite all you guys to come, and I appreciate you joining us tonight.